So in terms of the prioritization of the requirements, what do we as BAs need to do? So this is what we've put together in terms of a structure for this. So how do you prioritize? So what are the factors that you would need to consider before you actually try and say, okay, this is very important and urgent for me, this is not important, urgent? So what are the things? So obviously you need to look at the cost benefit aspect of it, look at the costs, look at the benefits. So these include not just costs as in the financials, but also the cost in terms of the opportunity cost. If you didn't do that, if you did not go for that requirement, then what is the potential opportunity cost? It could be tangible, it could be intangible. Similarly, the benefits could be, again, tangible and intangible. So tangible benefits are those which have got, like, for example, returns on investment, your sales, the income coming through sales, and all these things could be benefit. And good, for example, the goodwill of the in the market, the goodwill of the organization in the market, the brand image, the reputation, all of these are potential benefits. They don't have any value. You can't attach a value to the financial figure to that, but it's still a benefit, right? So we need to consider those aspects as well, both the tangible as well as intangible. And then obviously we need to address the aspects of risk. We discussed this multiple number of times. We talk about risks and technology risk. We don't have the technologies, or whatever the kind of technology changes that are impacting us, and potentially we can talk about as a risk that we need to address because of the fantastic pace of change that's happening in the technology space. So that offers us both an opportunity as well as a threat. It's a risk, because if you're not prepared, if you do not have the resources in our team, in our organization to lap up those opportunities, then we are actually potentially at risk of opportunity cost, for example, right? So how do we address the financial risk, market risk, business risk, right? People risk, people leaving organizations and going attrition, for example, is a huge people risk. So addressing all of these, and then obviously trying to understand what is the likelihood of that risk happening, and if it is happening, what is the potential impact that it could cause, right? All of these that we need to give, and then rank the risks and coming up with the mitigation aspects, mitigation, and how you can either accept the risk or you can avoid the risk, avert the risk, and perhaps sometimes you need to accept it and then just go on, which is what we're doing now in the context of the coronavirus that we have. We've got to accept that it's there. We can't avoid that. We can't avert it. We are all going through, the whole world has to go through this as a potential risk. And what can be done to to kind of come out of this and minimize the impact is what organizations have been thinking about. So all of these, again, coming in from the point of view of the prioritization. If we do not do this, if we do not incorporate this requirement into the build, what is the potential risk? Similarly, what is the time that could potentially take? Not just time, but also effort. So effort involved in developing that particular requirement, in implementing that requirement, right? And then what is a potential impact in terms of resources, that is people required, the time it takes, and all those things, right? So all of these need to be considered when you try and prioritize your requirements. So also, for example, you need to also look at the technical feasibility, for instance, right? So is it, even though from the business point of view, I think very important that we need to have the CRM application, we need to have this single repository where we can store all the customer relationship information, their address, their how many times have we called them, their response, and their loyalty, and all these things. It's important to have it in one place. But then in terms of technical feasibility, to have that kind of a system, either you can buy or you can build. So if you've got some of these systems already in place, which is, for example, Microsoft Dynamics and things like that, some ERP, some CRM systems are out there already. CBEL, for example, is already there in the market. So either you can buy those off-the-shelf products or the vendor products, which would obviously increase the cost, not just of buying, but also perhaps maintaining and then installation of those, configuration, consulting fee, everything, which is basically what we call as a total cost of ownership, TCO. Or you can build something on your own, which, so again, either for doing buying or building, you still need to take a decision whether we have got the resources in the place or not. And what is the technical feasibility? What are the kind of technologies we have already in place? What applications we have? How does it fit in the context of the existing application? All of these need to be thought through. And then what are the challenges of prioritization in terms of stakeholders? So, for example, if they value something different in a context of the value that it offers, for example, if it is an internal application, it could be seen as something. If it's an external application, which is helping the customers in the client-facing website or client-facing application, then it's given more importance than something that you have internally, because obviously customers are more important for us, and the business and the revenue comes from the customers. So we first need to serve the customers. That means even if we have got to do something internally in a difficult, in a tougher way, in a manual way, we're happy to do that, because that is all for the customers. So we can wager that we can actually try and trade off our own needs for a better application, better technology, and we can try and give preference to the customers application being developed so that they can use it. So obviously that's always that kind of a perspective is there with the stakeholders. And sometimes even the way they would identify the requirement as important or as not important, that again could be seen from the eyes of, from the view of the customer, of the stakeholders. Because sometimes, you know, a stakeholder might say, this is a business, as I said before as well, a business person, if you try and say, you know, we need to have the technology is important, they might not perceive the importance of that, because for them, their perspective is business, the customer, the organization's growth plan and the roadmap. Whereas if you take a business requirement to a technology person, CTO, CIO, and try and ask them about their view, their perspective would be different, because again, their perspective is on the technology, the tools, the resources, that the stack of the technology and the tools that we have, the perhaps the resources in terms of the people that can work on the skill set, and the technology roadmap in the next 5 years, 10 years, and how does that fit into the current context of the technology stack that we have. So that's the perspective of the technology stakeholders. So you need to really kind of look at how each of these stakeholders, from their own role, their own background, their own profile, would look at the requirements and then try and give their priority in a way that is coming out from their own perspective, and then indicate the priority to influence the results. Sometimes it's also important that stakeholders address the prioritization from the point of view of what is going to happen to my outcome. If the outcome is, if I give this requirement or a feature more importance, would that not impact my own team later? So again, that needs to be looked at from the point of view of their own agenda, their own goals, their own individual needs. It's not all political, but what we need to have is a sense of where they're coming from, what is their key driver in deciding the priority for some of the requirements, right? So we need to understand that. The continual prioritization, the customer, the business team, software development team, testing team, all of these engaged. They are all kind of work hand in hand to make sure that we have got the prioritization of the requirements in a continuous way. It's not just done once and forgotten, as I said. It's a continuous process, and to be able to deliver this prioritization as a continuous feature or as a continuous activity, all of these stakeholders, the business stakeholders, the customers, the users, the team, development team, the senior management, sponsors, testing team, right? All of these come into the picture, and they try and give their own way of looking at things, and they work in tandem to be able to come up with the